It was a sweltering summer night in 2017, but the air felt wrong. Thick, heavy, almost alive with something unseen. P. Diddy's annual Hamptons party, once a playground of the rich and famous, now seemed like a living nightmare. The mansion loomed in the distance, its walls black against the sickly glow of the moon, as if it were a breathing thing, waiting to devour its guests. The lawn, usually a sea of glistening chandeliers and laughter, were eerily silent. The crystal chandeliers, swaying in the breeze, cast jagged shadows that twisted unnaturally, cutting across the faces of the partygoers like skeleton hands. The infinity pool, far from being a symbol of luxury, appeared to a gaping maw, its water still and black, as though it were an abyss, swallowing the world. And then he arrived. Donald Trump appeared from the darkness, stepping out of the shadows with an unnatural gait. His golden hair, always an object of mockery, shimmered in a sickly yellow hue under the moonlight, like it was drenched in oil or something far worse. His eyes, once filled with the usual smug arrogance, now looked vacant, wide, as though they'd seen something on the other side of reality that no one should ever see. His skin hung loosely on his frame, as if the person inside was too big for the body he inhabited. The moment he stepped into the party, the temperature plummeted. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Laughter died. Eyes turned, but no one spoke. They couldn't. Something about his presence was suffocating, unnatural, as if he was no longer just a man, but a vessel for something ancient, something malignant. He moved toward the back of the mansion, where the shadow grew thicker, blacker, and the air became oppressive. Diddy's infamous freakoffs were said to take place there, but this was no ordinary competition. No. Tonight, there was something far darker at play. Whispers in the industry spoke of what really happened during those battles, but the truth was far more grotesque. It wasn't about talent or bravado, it was about survival. The freak-off wasn't a performance, it was a pact. As Trump moved towards the heart of the darkness, the guests at the party began to change. Their eyes hollowed, their smiles stretched wide and unnatural, as if invisible hands were pulling their faces into twisted grins. Their bodies, once vibrant, now appeared emaciated, barely clinging to their bones. They watched him with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, not with admiration or fear, but with hunger. He reached the back of the mansion, and the air around him pulsed with a deep, vibrating hum, like the sound of a dying heartbeat. The room was drenched in darkness, the walls slick with something thick and black, oozing down like the mansion itself was bleeding. There, in the center of the room, was a circle, an ancient, scorched thing carved into the floor, pulsing with an energy that made the air hum with unbearable tension. Without hesitation, Trump stepped into the circle. His body twitched, as if something inside him was trying to claw its way out. In his hand, a microphone appeared. Though it was no ordinary mic, it was rusted, twisted, as though it had been pulled from some decayed, forgotten place. The moment his hand closed around it, the shadows in the room began to move. They slithered across the walls, down from the ceiling, around his legs coiling, his arms, his throat. But still, he lifted the mic to his lips. The first sound he made wasn't human. It was a gurgling, chuckling noise, like something being dragged from the depths of the ocean. His body contorted violently, his bones cracking, his skin stretching, but he couldn't stop. His mouth opened wider and wider and wider until it was an impossible void. His eyes rolled back into his skull, and from that void, a voice, not of his own, began to speak. The words were not of this world. They were ancient, from a time when the earth was still dark, still wet with the blood of forgotten gods. As the words poured out, the room responded. The walls began to tremble, the floor cracking beneath his feet. The shadows that had been crawling over him twisted tighter, sinking into his flesh, disappearing beneath his skin. His body shook violently, but he kept speaking, kept chanting. His words were no longer words. They were an invocation, a summoning, and whatever he was calling, it was answering. The ground beneath him split open with a deafening crack. From the darkness below, a stench rose, a foul, rotten odor that filled the room, making the air unbreathable. The guests, now little more than hollow-eyed mannequins, began to twitch, their limbs jerking unnaturally as they too started to chant. Their voices, once human, now merged into something monstrous, something from beyond the grave. And from the pits below, something began to crawl out. It was a creature of nightmares, a mass of writhing limbs and eyes, all black and wet, its form constantly shifting, never settling on a shape. Its voice was a rasping hiss, a scream, 1,000 voices at one, all begging, pleading, cursing. It arose from the pit, and the room grew colder still, the very walls beginning to crack under the weight of its presence. Trump, or whatever had become of him, raised his arms as the creature wrapped itself around him, pulling him into its mass, merging with him. His body twisted, bending in ways no human body should. His face was the last to disappear, his mouth still open in that impossible scream until it too was swallowed by the darkness. The next morning, the mansion stood empty. No one remembered the party. No one remembered Trump. He was gone, erased from memory, from history. The guests who had been there wandered the streets, their eyes hollow, their souls lost, and somewhere, deep beneath earth, in a pit that should never have been opened, something waited, and it was still hungry.
There is nothing we can't make scary.